Welcome to the MacMillan Report. I'm Marilyn Wilkes, your host, and our guest is Tassos Kyriakides, an associate research scientist at Yale School of Public Health and an affiliated faculty member in the Hellenic Studies program at the MacMillan Center. His primary research focus is in the area of infectious diseases, with particular emphasis on HIV/AIDS and its treatment. He also has an interest in the history of medicine, social determinants of health, and the socio-cultural dimensions of the benefits of a Greek diet. Today we'll talk with Professor Kyriakides about nutrition, public health, and filotimo in Greece. Welcome, Professor Kyriakides.
Thanks, Marilyn, for having me. It's a great opportunity to
Thank
speak with you about this.
So let's start off with the definition of filotimo. What exactly does that mean?
Let me start with the literal translation of filotimo.
Okay.
It's two words meaning love of honor.
Okay.
However, it's hard to define that word in one context with one word. So I'm going to say a lot of values that come with it. It's honor, pride, doing what's right, even when somebody else is not looking. The idea of giving yourself and providing for somebody without being asked.
Okay.
So it entails a lot of values, and as the philosopher, pre-Socratic philosopher Thales said, philotimos for Greeks is like breathing. A Greek is not a Greek without it.
Okay.
So, and it's something that has kept the Greeks together in hard times and in not so hard times, but it's something that is a secret, if you will, of the Greeks.
Yes, I wasn't familiar with it, and I had to look up the word, the phrase myself. So how does that relate to nutrition and public health?
Well, Greeks and Greek nutrition and public health are something that the Greeks have always kept high in their priority, if I will. The idea of a healthy nutrition paradigm has always been there for the Greek culture. So the concept of sharing that and propagating that and sharing generation after generation and sharing with strangers, it to me resonates with that idea of filotimo, serving others while sharing and being proud of what your food and as it ties to nutrition and public health. And I think the Greeks have realized early on that prosperity of a nation is not just financial, it's health. So a healthy nation, I actually like that idea that a healthy nation is a prosperous nation, not just in the financial aspect, but also in the health of the individual and society.
Okay. How has the diet changed, or has it changed over time?
It has changed. Obviously, Greece, like any other place, has been affected by the globalization and the ability to source food at any given time and wherever you are. We have supermarkets that have replaced the local grocery stores. But the thing that has not changed is how people eat. They eat with friends and family. It's always a main part of the day to sit around the table and sort of go through the day. How was it? You know, tell me your problems.
Right.
And let's chat about this. And it's more of the I always think of there's a holy triad in the Greek culture of food, dialogue, and drink. Not necessarily in that order, but it's the idea that you get together, you talk about your problems, you bring people together on the table, friends and enemies alike, and you sort of have a common bond over that food.
And does that stretch across all socioeconomic levels in Greece?
It does. Obviously, the latest financial crisis that we've had has affected that, but I think it has made that ability to gather on the table has been maintained to the extent that it can. And across the board, you'll see, I don't think I've ever been to a restaurant or a place to get some food, or a grocery store where you don't see a lot of people together. You rarely see somebody sitting on their own. And sometimes, you know, if I find myself sitting at a restaurant alone, other people will come and chat with me that I don't know. So it's that idea that, you know, we're all here together to enjoy something, and we need to partake in that. So.
And is it lunchtime or more dinner time that this happens?
More dinner time, even though, you know, you find people taking the hour of lunch and just going out and sitting down and eating, not this eat at the table, eat at your desk sort of lunch, which I like when I'm there.
Yes, that is nice. So what are some of the anthropological components of food in Greece?
I mean, if you think about I'll give you another word, which I think encapsulates the idea of the human being being in the center, or food being in the center of the existence of a human being in Greece. Syntropos means somebody you eat with. And the translation of that word means partner, whether it's a friend or a spouse. So that shows how significant that if you're sharing food with somebody, it means that they're high on your sort of circle. So from that, you have the idea of this food and the culture propagating over generations, and not only in families, but then in villages and in towns and regions. So if you look at Greece, it's made up of not one cuisine. It's very local, very regional, and people are very proud. You have villages that make the same thing, but they think theirs is the best recipe, or families and all that, and that's been propagated. And I think that speaks to the ability of this nutrition and the food culture to propagate over time, despite the evolution of whether it's climate, whether it's other external factors. That has remained as part of society.
Right, okay. So are there some kinds of food that are traditionally prepared at holidays, cultural things that have stood the test of time?
Going back to how food relates to religion, Greek religion and culture go together, and when it comes to food, there's two big holidays, Christmas and Easter. But Easter, I think, is the big holiday, the religious holiday for the Greeks. And I think if you ask any Greek, they will have a memory around the lamb, the process of preparing it, and how do you enjoy it, and what goes into it, and there's a memory attached to that. So that, I think, is one example of something that over years and years and years and generations has remained there. It's like a preparation, whether it's going to the village or with family in town, but it's always the same process year after year.
Right. It seems like you have such a different I'm wondering how you got interested in this, because you study infectious diseases basically, and it seems quite a departure between the two. So what led you to be interested in this?
Always interested in food. Everybody is enjoying it, but then when you start thinking about the Greek nutrition and the Mediterranean diet in general, has always been known to affect benefit to the health of an individual.
And that would be typically olive oil.
Olive oil, the legumes, grains, limited amounts of meat, a lot of fish.
Wine.
So that wine. So there's, but everything in measure, everything in not exceeding certain, don't overdo it. So from that, when I started thinking about this about 10, 12 years ago, I saw there's a gap between the sort of the academic side of things, where a lot of research is happening by Greeks and non-Greeks alike, in this country and Europe or in Greece, that show in academic journals and publications that this is good. And on the other side, you have the people who are actually consuming that, and the only way that that information gets transmitted, because the lay public is not going to read academic journals, is if something makes the news in New York Times, CNN, BBC, whatever. So I thought, how do we bridge that gap? So I started putting together another series of events that we had it 10 years ago at MacMillan Center, and that brought together people who are doing the research, but also people who are actually executing, the food preparation, the chefs, the people who are involved in sourcing that. So out of that came this idea that food is not just the calories we consume, and we know that. What is it? It's not just the benefit we get from in health-wise, but there's a bigger context here. It's the social health that is affected by that, because there's something to be said about sitting down with somebody, enjoying good food that's good for your health, but at the same time, you talk with them, you engage them, whether it's your problems you're trying to share or their problems. And there's something that is magic, I think, that happens around, wine helps, but even without wine, there's something that makes people bond over food.
Right.
So
There's
that
a
created that,
connectiveness,
and there's a connectiveness in food.
Yeah. I am wondering, in this country, of course, fast food plays such a huge role in how people eat and nutrition. Do you find the same thing happening in Greece?
There's definitely, you can see more fast food sort of places now, but the interesting thing, and I try to remember from my early years when I was there, fast food for us was defined differently. Fast food was healthy fast food and not the fast food that we know in this country. It's changing a little bit, but you won't find a lot of obviously younger generations are moving toward,
Right.
going towards that. But at the end of the day, the majority, I think, of the food you consume, whether you call it fast food, grilled something, it's still better than fast food deep fried.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a difference in how you define fast food in this country versus
Right.
Greece. But people have maintained, you'll find open air markets where people go on weekends and buy their lettuce
Right.
and their veggies and their legumes. They might have a fast food day, but again, the fast food is a little bit different than here.
Right. So you mentioned the youth in Greece. Do you see them keeping the traditions or perhaps changing a bit?
I think it goes in cycles. I would say 10 years ago, you could see a lot more the younger people moving towards sort of a more globalized food consumption model. Now I think, and it's sort of a side effect as a result of this financial crisis, you see a few, slowly you see young people going towards, whether it's out of necessity, obviously, agro-entrepreneurship, or growing your own veggies at home, or doing something that maybe that was not the main reason you went there, but it's sort of an indirect way of bringing you back to the old way of consuming food and sourcing food. So I don't want to say, well, it's a good thing that happened, but it's a good side effect of this financial crisis. And there's a lot of cases of young people who have been unemployed for many years and then go in the agriculture sector that Greece is known for.
Right.
And now we see this movement of bringing young people out, and we're actually trying with the Agricultural University in Athens and to collaborate and establish some programs with the Climate Change and Health Initiative here at the School of Public Health to do something.
Right. In this country, there's a huge movement towards, the opposite of fast food, which is slow food, which is eating food locally grown. So it sounds like, that's something that's happening in Greece. The other thing, though, I'm curious about is because the world is much more globalized, do you see different cultures coming in, Chinese food, Italian food, well, not that Italian is so far off from what you're doing, but Indian food, Thai food, that kind of thing. Is that growing at all in Greece?
Not as fast as here, obviously, but and it's not because it's not accepted. It's not people are not willing to try it, but there's something, and I think it goes back to this filotimo. I mean, you're proud of what you have. You're willing to try something different, but you sort of want to showcase what you have, and it's good for you. You've carried it through generations of in Greece, so why not embrace that even more?
Right. So in terms of gender, is it equal between men doing the cooking and women doing the cooking, or is it predominantly one or the other?
It's predominantly women.
Okay.
Men will do the cooking probably Easter and outdoors.
The grilling.
The grilling.
Yeah.
So it's mostly, and it goes, like I said, generation after generation. You have your grandmother's recipe, who got it from her grandmother, and there's something to be said about that tradition that keeps this going on.
Right. I know you're going to be doing a conference here at the MacMillan coming up shortly. So first talk about the conference and what are you expecting to find in doing it?
We decided to do two panels on this conference to tie nutrition, public health, and filotimo. The first one actually happened late last fall, where we had people from the Agricultural University of Athens and somebody who's in the industry, the olive oil industry, who's used this idea of people want to go back into the agricultural world and started small groups to sort of instill in them the idea that it's okay to be a farmer. We've been doing this for many, many years, and it's good for everybody, and sort of started some programs. So that was the one aspect, to show that, how is that working. The second one is tying more the idea of this financial crisis. How do people come around and sort of bond with food and producing food, and how does that help sort of, one, address the financial aspect of things? We know things are getting more expensive. If you source it from other places, it's going to be more expensive. Why don't we produce it ourselves, source it locally, and at the same time bring back that power of the I'm doing something good, I'm proud of what I'm doing, and sort of change that attitude that agriculture is not for us anymore.
Well, that is interesting, because I'm thinking have things evolved to a point where, you know, where farmers are lower on the socioeconomic level, and, you know, Greeks aspire to be more than that, so now there's kind of a, I don't want to say a public relations campaign, but more of a way to show how it is, you know, more highly thought of. Is there that kind of thing going on?
That's changing.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely that's changing. In the last few years I've seen it's no longer a bad thing to be a farmer, because farmers are very knowledgeable of what they do.
Right.
With some help, they can go to a level where they never thought they would be before.
Right.
And now with globalization, again, the example of olive oil producers now, before it was you're selling your olive oil to somebody who comes and buys in bulk.
Right.
Now you're proud of your own olive oil. You're going to be willing to participate in a co-op or something that will
Right.
help you either sell it within the country or export it. So now there's a different way of looking at, I'm a farmer, I'm an olive oil producer,
Right.
I'm a wine producer, and you know, just like olive oil, wines have seen a lot of success
Sure.
in the U.S. from Greece, from small wine producers who thought 10 years ago you told them, I'm going to be selling your wine in the U.S., and they looked at you and like, who would buy my wine? So there was that pride to produce something, but at the same time feeling a little bit, who would buy my product? Now that's changing, and I think part of it is a necessity to understand that we have to go forward with this idea, and part of it is, yeah, it's good, why not?
So you're exporting a lot more than you had previously
Yes.
been doing in terms of wine and olive
Yeah.
oil. Anything else produced in
Well,
Greece?
a lot of, like I said, if you look at the Greek cuisine and the components, the ingredients, they're very local, and people now are moving into identifying particular products as unique to that to that part. For example,
yes.
on the island of Santorini, there's a split pea, a yellow split pea that they've actually did chemical analysis to show that it's unique to that island. So now they're producing it, packaging and exporting it with that unique identity, genetic identity that says this particular legume is only grown on this island, and that generated a lot of enthusiasm. And now it's done. Probably it's going to be done with cheeses, with a lot of other produce. So it gives you a lot of hope how things are moving, I think.
Right, yeah, it is interesting
Yeah.
because chefs are always looking
Yep.
for that next
Yes.
hot product to use. So that's
Yeah.
very exciting, and it makes me want to visit Greece.
You should.
Yes, I should. Thank you so much for being here with us
Oh,
today. Very
thank-
interesting.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. For more information about Professor Kyriakides and his research, please visit our website at macmillanreport.yale.edu. Be sure to join us again for another episode of the MacMillan Report, made possible through funding from the Whitney and Betty MacMillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale.